Hello. This is a little bit more uh, orthodox than I'm used to making, and by used to I mean just within the last couple of weeks I've been playing around with the GoPro, being brought to you today by GoPro Hero Plus, a new addition to my inventory of toys, and been playing around with it for a little over 2 weeks now, and made a few recordings, a couple of videos that you may or may not see. Depends. Like a lot of things that I've created in my life, I haven't shared a lot of it, and obviously this is a work in progress, and I haven't decided where and how and whatever any of this is going to end up being. But one thing that's been on my mind for a while is that I probably should make some type of an introduction. So this is it. This is my formal introduction to you, the viewer. And thanks for taking the time to watch. And if you're viewing this, it's probably out of any kind of chronological order, because I know there are a few things that I've already put out that are out there floating around, and there will be other things, and depending on when you stumble across or take an interest in viewing an introduction and a brief background by me, then who knows. Like I said, I was trying to structure this a little bit more in a format that would be, well, I don't even know. Again, this is all kind of new, so generally when I record something, it's just turn the camera on and start talking, and whatever's on my mind comes out. But I have a list of things that I felt was important to convey. First of all, who I am and how I got to be here, sitting in my very comfortable home in San Antonio, Texas. First off, my name is Jason, and it is currently the 3rd of February 2016. I would, based on the calendar in this timeline, I am 44 years old and will be 45 in October. I have been following this path for you're also going to have to excuse the fact that I have a bit of cedar fever, which I've been dealing with for the last several weeks. So clearing my throat and sneezing and coughing and occasionally blowing my nose may be something you're going to enjoy as well. So as I kind of mentioned, that this is a work in progress. You are joining this show in progress. At some point you will view this, and it is going to be sometime on after the timeline of today, February 3rd, 2016, and who knows where I'll be or what I have done in the time between now and when you see. So I am trying to format myself, trying to stick to a script or an agenda is distracting for me. It's just part of my nature. It's part of how I do things, which has been why, after 44 years of basically experiencing the world and trying to understand the things around me and formulating philosophies and ideas and generating concepts and systems to help improve my life and eventually help others. Not that I am set on making the world a happier place, but I think when it comes down to it, we're all pursuing a better lifestyle, a more enhanced quality of life, and a happier life. And that's not to say that you have to be happy all the time, because I am not happy all the time, but I am happy. And I think there's a blend, there's a mix in there, and over time I will elaborate more and more on my philosophies and my ideas, and through the process they are going to evolve. So the things that I say today, the things I believe today and state today in theory may not be the same as what I believe down the road. And obviously my dog decided that she needs to come inside. So it looks like you get introduced to Andromeda as well. Now she's going to want to play. She's going to be part of this too. You have my name, and that's a big deal, because when I first started this out, I really wanted to do it from an anonymous standpoint, and eventually, sometime way down the road, reveal myself. And it's changed. Yeah, just like I said, my approach, my philosophy, my ideas as far as how to live my life and what I can pass along to others is changed slightly. It's modified, and with growth comes change. And I believe that this is a path of evolution, my own personal evolution, and if you're watching this, hopefully your own evolution. I don't believe in any set universal truths. It'll come across, I'll say that, I've said it repeatedly, and I have recordings and written notes, and now a handful of videos, but it's going to be a recurring pattern. It's something that has not changed. It's been with me since as far back as I can remember being consciously able to think. That don't believe in any kind of a universal truth. I've modified it over the years to basically be truth is relative to the individual. If you were drawn to watch anything that I've recorded or any of the work that I have put out there, then you have similar interests, and that's great. And that's what the body of this is intended to be, to draw in individuals with similar interests, similar ideas, and create a new reality, or enhance the reality that you're already experiencing. So I wanted to at some point sit down and create a formal introduction and a formal background, which obviously I've stated, and this is it. And hopefully the more I become comfortable with this and settle into it, the ideas that I had in mind when I sat down and pushed the record button, which I've been working on now for several days, going on weeks, as I've kind of built this project up into my mind. Hopefully they stay clear and I stay on point and true to topic and don't waver too much. I'm easily distracted, and my thoughts drift frequently and in varying degrees. So I'd like to keep this as concise as possible, but it's going to wander. So welcome to the journey. I was raised in the Quad Cities, and I've only been in Texas now for creeping up on 5 years. It'll be 5 years this August. I drove down in August of 2011 to make a change. And through my study of myself and the world around me and developing what I thought was a system to enhance my life and possibly other people's lives, I have gone through several different cycles or phases in my life, and it was early in 2011 that I decided I'm going to make a change, and I'm going to document my progress and the steps that I took along the way, trying to focus on what my goals were at the time and what steps I was taking to reach those goals, and then documenting how living life sometimes changes those goals, changes what it is you're pursuing. And there's nothing wrong with that. And as long as you stay true to yourself and try to keep an idea of what your desires are, you can't go wrong. I truly believe that you cannot go wrong if you are true to yourself. So a huge basis of all of this is the very old saying of know thyself. I mean, the more you know about who you are, and honestly know, you can delude yourself, and I did it for a long period of time on certain subject matter and certain approaches to life, and really thought, all right, well, this is who I am, and it may have been an ideal, and maybe I wasn't living up to the ideal, or it may have been less than ideal, and I was actually living a life that was better than I was giving myself credit for based on my standards and my own expectations. So what I wanted to do is lay down a little bit of groundwork, a little bit of background of how I got here. And being raised in the Midwest, it's a very small town-ish. It is definitely not a small town. It's a medium-sized town, considering that it's actually several cities all grouped together on the Iowa-Illinois border. And growing up there, I felt like I wanted to get out. I wanted to go to a larger metropolitan area. I wanted a different environment. And I had some ups and downs through my childhood, getting into my teen years, and I went away to school in Denver, Colorado in 1990, and it was life-changing, which, you know, a lot of things can be. And I ended up getting back into the Quad Cities and not going back to Denver, and just through a series of decisions, which is how we all get to wherever we're at. And for a long time, years after that, I really felt like living in that bigger city was more conducive to my personality, but I had sort of resigned myself to living this smaller town life in the Quad Cities. And even though most of the people that I knew or associated myself with through high school and into my early 20s were all of the same opinion: want to get out of this town, want to go to Chicago, want to go to New York, want to go to wherever. The Quad Cities was growing, it was expanding, it was getting, you know, things that larger cities had, and had more to offer. And the more I looked at it, the more I kind of decided, well, you know what, this isn't a bad place to live. And it was a conscious decision to stay there and not pursue living in a different environment. And through a lot of different experiences, I was somewhat content. I don't think I was ever happy, and I didn't realize that until just a few years ago. And hopefully I'll circle back around to that and remember to talk about that. But due to the unscripted nature of how I process and go through things, it may not come back to that. So I guess if you have a question about that later on down the road, you can ask about it if I don't get back to it. But so I made a decision to stay there. I felt like, all right, it's got, you know, sports teams, it's got a civic center. We do get concerts and shows in town, which when I was a kid, we didn't have any of that. It was very rare or random that you got anything like that. If you wanted to see a big concert tour or a Broadway show on a regular basis, you had to go to a larger venue, a larger city, and it was either driving to Iowa City, driving to Chicago, driving to Des Moines, that were, you know, just a little bit larger scale and had more to offer on those fronts. So, but I really felt like it was a safe place. Didn't have, I felt like, the crime or the gangs or the drug problems that you were going to encounter in a larger city. It didn't have as much of a diversity in demographics as far as income groups. Yeah, there was people that were well off, and yeah, there was people that were struggling, but it just didn't seem like we had the extremes. There wasn't as many of the homeless, dirt poor, struggling, living on the streets population, and there wasn't as many millionaires, and to my knowledge, growing up, and I really never met a millionaire. To me, when I was growing up, a millionaire was somebody that you saw on TV or you read about in magazines. It wasn't something that existed there. That's not saying they weren't there, but it wasn't something that was advertised or at least from a child standpoint, something that you encountered on a daily basis. So not like I think today with the access to computers and media that promote and advertise that type of a lifestyle. But anyway, to me, it seemed more of a middle of the road kind of a place. It was a safe place to live. There wasn't as much danger. There wasn't as much risk involved with living there, and there was a support system. Our families are there, so it was very easy to try and get by. And considering the path that I was on and the choices that I had made, it was probably the best step for me, because I think had I stayed in Denver and continued down the path that I took, I could have very easily destroyed myself and not be here today. So if it wasn't for that family support system and the ability to lean back on my parents to get through some of the hard times, especially financially, that I wouldn't have made it to where I am now. And I have no regrets. I can honestly sit here at 44 years old and say I have no regrets. I don't regret any decision that I've ever made. Everything that I've ever done has helped me get to where I am now. And I'm hoping that the foundation I've built inside myself, the character I've built, my belief in pride, honor, and integrity, and the choices that I've made based on those principles have given me enough to support myself moving forward, which is why I waited as long as I waited to really come out of my shell. So it's really been an observational cycle in my life up until recently, where I've decided to open up and share myself more. And it's been a conscious effort. It takes me specific steps, and I am all about systems and developing a system for basically approach anything. And so it's been like baby steps, really. I've reached out to within the last year to friends that I've lost contact with, because I really have had no strong connections with anybody in my life ever. My current wife is the closest person in my life that I've ever had. I've shared more with her, and honestly, I don't think she's ever seen any of these recordings or listened to any of them or seen any of my notes. It's possible that she's snuck a peek here and there, but she just doesn't really seem to have an interest in them, which is fine. It's great. So our relationship is based on me being me and her being her, and us dealing with the things that you deal with on a daily basis as a couple, as parents, as individuals, as whatever kind of category you want to throw at it in life. And having a similar idea, similar approach, and desire for experiencing life that makes us compatible. And I'm closer to her than I've ever been to anybody else, but like I said, I don't share everything with her. I don't talk about things of this nature with her because she doesn't really have an interest in it. And I'm not going to force it upon her, and if she ever wants to sit down and talk, then I'm great. Yeah, let's talk about it. But it's really a truth in my life, just the connection that we have, and I'm very happy with that. And but it just is an example of how limited I've made myself available to the people that I've encountered in my life. And it's, for me, for the intent, for the purpose of evaluation. I've been evaluating life from a human standpoint and analyzing well, everything. There's too much to list, and it's been a cycle of learning, and I made a realization within the last year that that quiet hiding period in my life has served its purpose. I have gotten to the doorway of the next level, and I'm walking through that doorway. This is part of that process. I'm opening up and allowing myself to have more interactions with other individuals, and the first step in that was reaching out and reestablishing some connections with people that I had been friends with in the past. The cycle of my teenage years into my early 20s was one of the biggest growth periods for me in my life, and I really opened up because I'd really been closed off prior to that, and I made some, friendships. I established friendships and relationships with some people that I really enjoyed. I met some people during that period of my life that I liked and have liked more than anybody that I've met, to date. I made more connections and established more relationships during that time period than I have probably in all the time since then. And part of it is because I've kind of kept myself closed off. Part of it is because I haven't come across too many people that I've found a strong draw to. So, but it's limited the distractions, and I believe that it was intentional. That and I don't think I want to break that out now. I could really get off topic by talking about how I feel and believe we predetermine part of our life's patterns by pre-wiring ourselves before we're even born. But it's quick to note, and again, something we can come back to. But based on that belief and that ideology that we do create a generalized pattern for where we want to go in our lives prior to even being born, it fits. It fits with everything else about me, with from what I understand about my own psychology to the obstacles that I've had to overcome. And some of those obstacles, and not even some of them, I'm going to go ahead and say that all of them are there for a reason. They lead you in a certain path. It's not much different than controlling the pattern or path of electricity in a circuit board by putting different resistance in the path to create the path, the cycle that you want in. I'm not proficient in electrical technology by any means, but I do have a basic understanding of that, and that's where everything that I have comes from. It's a basic understanding of basically everything, and it's using that to develop where I wasn't analyzing things from a philosophical standpoint. I've had a draw to the idea, the concept, and the word philosophy since I was in elementary school, very early in elementary school. The whole idea behind it drew me in, and I've been making philosophical determinations and developing theories as far back as, I can actually remember thought processes along these lines as early as kindergarten, and even before being involved in any kind of organized schooling system. So it's been it's distraction time. So between the phone alerting me that I have some kind of text, the dog dropping the ball on my lap, it's a test of my focus and my concentration to see how well I can rebound. So, no, go play with your ball. Get your ball. It's over there. So, being sidetracked and then refocusing and coming back into it is for a purpose. It gets me back on topic to where I was at. So I've really lived an isolated life, and it's been by choice. A long time ago, when it came out, I don't remember when it was, but the movie A Beautiful Mind, his general idea, again, with the distractions. His general idea, his drive, his desire was to come up with an original idea. And that's kind of dumbed down, but it's easy enough to just put it out there like that. And that's really what's been driving me my whole life, is coming up with an original idea, an original approach, and I have to ask myself why. Well, that comes back to that pre-programming that I was talking about. There's certain things that have been implanted into your subconscious by yourself, and again, there's a lot of different ways to break this down and describe it. So if we're going to be out there and nitpick my terminology because it may not be technically correct, you're missing the whole point. Because I've always been a what's in a name kind of person, and that the actual words and terminologies are given great importance by certain individuals, but really have nothing to do with it. It comes down to the thought being conveyed, the idea being conveyed, and can it be conveyed? So if you're one of those individuals, go fuck yourself. Back to that. I wanted everything that I developed to be more of a individualist, original approach, and I didn't want to taint that with other people's view of reality or other people's view of any subject matter. Really, I really wanted life to be an open palette, something that I could investigate, evaluate, explore, understand, but I wanted it to be untarnished by someone else's perspective. And I'm not saying that the thoughts that I have are all original, because that's really, as much as there is to offer in this reality, as much detail is here, none of it's original. We've been in existence long enough for humanity to, at some point or another, have an individual think about, analyze, discuss, present an opinion or an option about reality that the dog's putting in her evaluation of the situation. So if you're really, really paying attention to this, you can find the similarities and circumstances similar to living your life. You have a goal, you have an objective, you make a conscious decision to move forward and evaluate, discover, follow a path, and life is constantly moving. There's always something going on. So in the process of me making this video, life is contributing. The dog barks, the dog wants in, the dog wants out, wants to play with her ball. I get sidetracked by watching the leaves on the trees blow outside the window. And that's me trying to take in as much of what's going on around me as possible and still try to follow this path. So this is going to be a winding recording. But through this process, and not just this video, but future videos or whatever product that I put out there, don't just focus on the obvious. The words that are coming out of my mouth are important to me, they're important to what I'm doing, but there's going to be subtleties there that can easily be missed if you're not paying attention. So try not to miss anything. So isolated life, back on topic. I intentionally avoided continuing education, furthering myself through the academic process. I did not want to be exposed to life through somebody else's eyes or through a syllabus of what someone else thought was important. So I intentionally avoided college. I intentionally kind of lived my life, especially in high school years, withdrawn from the process. I took what I needed to take, absorbed what I felt like was going to serve me the most in my life, and did what I had to do to pass. That was really the only objective. My goal, and it was an unknown goal at the time, was understanding and experiencing life, and I had a vague understanding of that through my high school years and afterwards. And like I said, I did go away to school, but it was to art school. It was to study design. I really thought that I wanted to be an architect and a designer, and I've always been fascinated by structure and the process of developing the structure and the subtle intricacies in the architecture. And there's a lot of things that can be learned in that, but that's where I really thought I wanted to go. And it's it was relationships that really deterred me from that. It was a relationship with what ended up being my first wife that kind of pulled me from that path, distracted me, set me on another path that was, like I said, conscious decisions along the way to pursue this instead of that, to see where this path leads, to fulfill a certain desire for an experience. And it wasn't an easy path. It's definitely has not been easy. It's been difficult, and that's where I find the value. There's value granted by me to those difficult situations, and I think anybody existing in this reality at this time can agree on one thing, that the more difficult the situation is that you overcome, the more pain, the more suffering that you go through, the greater impact for good it has in your life. And that's a hard concept to grasp in certain situations and circumstances when all you can see is the pain, all you can see is the downside. And I'm not saying that there's an upside to every situation. I'm not saying that at all, because sometimes the only upside is knowing that you've experienced it and taking something from that. And again, another topic for another time. There's too much out there to ever cover in any one sitting or any one body of work, and I could spend the rest of my life explaining my conclusions and never cover everything. And that's part of the beauty of it. So I mean, and what I'm laying out here with this breakdown of the isolation that I've kind of lived in is I didn't come to any conclusions. I didn't come to any great philosophical breakthroughs easily. I lived life, and I'm still living life. And even though I'm interacting on a personal level with other individuals to further establish my philosophy and way of life, again, dog barks and you lose train of thought, and staring at the camera now, kind of lost. So anyway, I'm just trying to give some context. I'm trying to give some background to how I got to where I am. That the things that I say, the beliefs that I have, I didn't get them because I read them in a book somewhere. I didn't get them because somebody told me this is the way it is. And I said, oh, great. I was hoping somebody would tell me. No, I've been living life. I've been working right here with everybody and coming to an understanding the same way any other human being on the planet comes to an understanding, by experiencing it. And as much as I can tell you about what I've learned about my experiences, they aren't going to mean anything to you unless you've had similar experiences and you can put context. And I use that word a lot because it's in my mind a lot. It's context. It's taking a generalized idea or concept and applying it to different situations to come up with a personal understanding of the nature of you, because your reality is individual to you. It is relative to you. And what I'm trying to do is pass along what I know. And when I say no, it's because this is what I understand. It's what I've, through repetitive processes, come to believe. So when I say I know this is how it is, which I usually try to stay away from absolutes like that, but for me, in my life, this is my reality and these are my absolutes. And a big part of having those is knowing that they can change at any time. Everything is constantly growing, evolving, expanding, and due to your individual process, the absolutes that you have may change as well. And all I'm asking is that you be open to letting them change, to letting go of some of those absolutes in your life, because holding on to them can sometimes hold you down, and sometimes being held down is not a bad thing. Sometimes it's conducive to your overall bigger picture. And but be willing to consider the option of letting some of those things go, and I think everybody will be in a better place. So this is where we're at now. I'm sharing my life. I'm sharing my existence that I've been keeping to myself for years upon years, and I really wasn't sure when I started this recording how much I wanted to get into my personal life and the experiences that I've gone through that have led me to the conclusions that I've come to. But maybe some general broad overviews, which I've really kind of covered from a personal standpoint. I grew up in the Quad Cities. I was actually born in Texas, in Austin, on the Air Force Base. My dad was in the Air Force when I was born, and was out shortly after that. They relocated back up to the Quad Cities, where my dad was raised. My mother is from the East Coast. She met my dad while he was in the Air Force in New York while he was stationed there, and with the exception of the few months that they, and I don't even know the length of time that they were here in Texas before they moved back up there, and then they lived briefly in a home in Silvis, then moved to a house in East Moline, which is where they lived and they still live. They've been in that same location this whole time. It's the house that I grew up in, that I was raised in, and I have no memories, no recollection of the homes that we lived in prior to that, and it was within, my first 2 years of life that I lived in those homes, but I don't really have any recollections of those. So for me, my whole life was lived, childhood life that is, until I became an adult and moved out on my own, was experienced in that house in East Moline. My grandparents lived right across the street, my dad's parents, so I had a close relationship with them. When they both passed away, I moved into that house. I lived in that house for several years. We moved in February of 2007 and lived there until we decided to come to Texas. So living in that home, that period of my life that we lived in that house was what led me to making the change to come here to Texas to pursue what I'm doing now. As many times in my life as I thought, all right, this is the path that I'm going to take to get to my final goal, and I've always had an idea of what that final goal was going to be, and it has always been to be a leader, an instructor. I mean, I've always been fascinated by the great minds of the world, and one of the things that I was striving to be. I wanted to be one of those individuals when I grew up. I mean, what did you want to be when you grew up? Well, I want to be Aristotle. I want to be Einstein. I want to be Tesla. I mean, nobody says that, but that's where my mind was at. That's where my heart was at. I felt like I had the same potential as any of those individuals. And that list goes on and on and on. But it's a hard thing to grasp. That's where your heart is leading you. That's where your desire is leading you. But how do you say, all right, well, I want to get to be in my life as influential to the world as those individuals? There's no career map for that. There's no guidance counselor recommended course of action to take to reach that. But I've had several interests in life. Architecture was one. I thought I could go to school to design, and I thought designing would lead to I really wanted to open up a club or a hospitality service point of some type, a bar, a restaurant, cafe, bed and breakfast. All these things have gone through my mind in the years that I've been following this path. And I do remember really early on, I was heavily influenced in my life by a teen club that I hung out in. I spent most of my late teen years at this teen club on the weekends, and music was a huge influence in my life, and it was the period where I became the most social. I had more friends and acquaintances that I knew and saw on a regular basis and interacted with than at any point in my life, just those few years. And that was because that's what I had been exposed to. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to have, that's how I want to get to where I'm going to be. I want to have a club, and I want to interact with people, and then I want to be able to, provide experiences for people that maybe change their lives. I was a huge fan of Fantasy Island, the television show, when I was growing up, and I was like, that's kind of where I want to go. I want to provide a location, a physical location that people can go, that they can get away from their lives and experience what they truly desire. And there's a lot of stuff that can be read into that, and again, I'm not going to elaborate on all that stuff, but it's really a desire to help individuals understand what they want and pursue those things. I don't, and I've never wanted a following in the sense of people looking to me to provide their answers and their guidance. I do want to guide in a certain sense, but I don't want to create a mass of mindless zombies that are just waiting for your every word. I really want to stimulate independent, free thinking and create a world full of individuals. Really, that's my goal, and I really think that once someone embraces their individuality and can experience life knowing who they are and what they like and freely experience everything that they are drawn to, they contribute to the greater good. That's what they can inspire others to do the same thing. They can that's where I'm going to cut that off. That's a pretty basic and simple premise to me, I believe, to understand. And I've got time to elaborate on topics and give more understanding. But that gives you an idea of my drive and where I've really tried to take myself. And talking about these paths, I had that idea of where I eventually want to be when everything is said and done in this life. The goal I wish to have achieved is to have assumed that role and made an impact on the world. And I've had a lot of different interests, and I've had a lot of periods in my life where I'm like, this is probably going to be the best way, the most conducive way for me to get to that end goal. Like I said, I thought architecture was great. I wanted to build buildings and houses and structures or people that could enhance people's lives. And then I drifted into the hospitality industry and started cooking for a living and thought that I could change the world by providing nourishment and food. And there's a whole philosophical breakdown for that whole period of my life where I was in food service, and I'm still passionate about that industry. There's something about providing nourishment for somebody else and the way that we as humans enjoy food, the way we're wired to take pleasure in that. There's infinite possibilities there for experiencing life. If you're involved in that industry, there's no shame in that. There's honor in that, and there's things that I've come up with that hopefully at some point I'll be able to share and revolutionize that industry and the quality of life that the people that are involved in that have. So a huge chunk of my life was involved in that process, and I've tried to live really a simple, minimalistic life up until this point. I've tried to get by on as little as possible, and again, there's a reason behind it. It was trying to keep myself humble. It was trying to keep myself grounded and down to earth and experience life from a standpoint of having little or having nothing. And there's been several periods in my life where I've had nothing, and I mean nothing. And how can you guide others that are in that situation if you've never been there yourself? You can't be an individual of means that has never gone without in life and guide someone through a period in life that wants to make a change in their quality of life if you've never experienced it. So I'm 44 years old, and I'm at the highest point financially that I've ever been in my life. I own a home, and it's the third home that I've owned. I've lost the other two in foreclosure at some point in my existence. I have two cars, and they're two cars that I've always wanted my whole life. I've always been drawn to Mustangs. I don't know why, since I was a child. My dad had one, that might be it. Who knows? If you want to spend your time evaluating the psychology behind that, be my guest. I've analyzed it to death. I have a pretty good understanding of it and pretty comfortable with it, but it doesn't make any difference how. It was there. I love Mustangs, always have. I bought one when I was 21, an older one, and I couldn't restore it like I thought I would be able to. It was financially a poor idea for me to purchase that and try to make that work, but it was pursuing a desire, pursuing a dream. So I had one, and Jeeps. I've always loved Jeeps. I loved being able to take the top off a Jeep. My neighbor had one when I was in high school. I thought they were fantastic. I loved them. So two cars I always wanted, a Jeep and a Mustang, and that's what I currently own. And the day that I bought the Jeep, I bought the Mustang in 2012 on a whim, and was just in awe of myself and where I had gotten since we had been to Texas, that I was able to do that. Because in my financial ups and downs, I've gone through periods of life with nothing, not even pocket change, nothing financially, nothing in the bank, no, trying to figure out how I'm going to put food on the table. I've lived that life, and I wasn't, a weekend, it wasn't a month, it wasn't a year, it was years that I've gone through that process and lived that life. So to make the change, to make the decision to not only pursue a loftier path, but to provide a better financial existence, you have to understand the system, and that's where I've been in the last 6-8 years, is gaining a better understanding of our financial system and how to manipulate it, how to get from one point to the next and advance yourself. So am I well off? It depends on your perspective. If you're living on the street, yeah, might as well be a millionaire. From my standpoint, I'm very comfortable with where I am, and very happy with what I've gained and acquired. So I have a home, I have two cars. They're financed. I don't own them outright, but it's part of this process. I've been through bankruptcy twice in my life, and that's a kick in the nuts, really. I mean, the getting to the point to make the decision to file for bankruptcy and then going through the process, it's difficult. It'll affect you. But I have no regrets, and I don't want to say that I was irresponsible or mismanaged monies, but I made choices in life that I thought were for the greater good. And at no point did I ever say, I'm going to make this decision because I want to screw somebody over because I think the world owes me. But I took risks, and that's part of what life is. There's understanding what you want and where you want to go, and saying, all right, well, I can get there this way, I can get there this way. There's always multiple paths to take, and it's making a choice to follow a certain path and take it to where it leads. And I hate to say the word failed, because I don't feel like I failed. It was part of my process, but I took risks, and some of them didn't pay off. And part of it was my psychology. Part of it was my approach. What was my mindset following those paths, and what was my goal, and what was some of the things that I was carrying along with me that were deterring me from getting to where I wanted to get to. So it's understanding those things about yourself, which it was the hardest part about losing the voice notes that I had accumulated from the day that I sat in the garage at that house in East Moline, and I pulled my phone out and I turned the voice recorder on and I stumbled through making a recording saying that this is it. This is the day I'm making a change and I'm starting a new path, and I'm going to follow this to wherever it goes, and I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to share it with others so that others can see the path that I followed and maybe make some of the decisions in their life to reach their own goals. And there's more recordings out there that discuss that. There's already a couple on YouTube where I break them down from a few months back, and I've touched on it since I've started doing the video recordings too. But the hardest thing to lose was that day-to-day documentation, the thoughts that I went through, the feelings that I was having, and identifying the feelings and thoughts that were somewhere in my psychology that were holding me back, and saying, you know what, this is part of the reason why I haven't been as successful as I could have been, because I've been carrying this with me. I've been looking at the situation from this perspective, and I need to change it. And the process of making those changes, because you can make that statement one day and revert back and slip back into the same mindset a day later, a month later, and you're in the same situation. It's identifying those things in your life and in your mind and in your approach, and making the decision to change them, and then the process of change them, and because it's not always easy. It's really easy in concept. Make the change, but it can't get any simpler than that. But having to make that change and still live life and make other changes and understand the other things that are going on in the world around you and your existence, sometimes it's easier said than done. So losing those notes it really was devastating for me, because I really felt like a good portion of what I could have shared with others, because it was my mindset. There were days where I felt like I was going to break down and cry because of where I was at and the difficulties I was having. And I had that all on tape. I had them live, real time, documenting. I woke up this morning, this happened yesterday, this happened today, this is where I'm at, and I had all that. And it's possible that there is an older computer around here that I may have saved things on. I don't even know if I can get it to turn on. So I kind of am holding on to this little sliver of hope that it's out there and it will come back to me at some point, and I'll be able to share it with people. But haven't done much to pursue it, because right now sometimes that sliver of hope is enough to inspire and motivate you, and knowing that the possibility that it's not there and that hope being gone is more detrimental to moving forward than, well, so anyway, it might be there. So I'm hoping at some point I can reacquire those and maybe share those, because there was a lot of time, there was a lot of effort, and there was a lot of reality crammed into those. So but I made that decision on that day, and I started recording, and I recorded it pretty much every day following that, from that early day in probably April of 2011 to the day that we decided to get in the car and drive to Texas, to the day that I started working for Boardwalk, and all of my ups and downs since I've been in property management, and what I've learned about myself and the world around us, and the nature of personal interactions that have gotten me here today. And I'm excited about stepping into this new phase, this new cycle in my life of interacting and sharing and building on those ideas. Like I said, it was really 44 years of building a foundation to give me the base to stand on to continue building until I reach my goals. And there's things that I've learned along the way that can help people, really. And again, it's I don't want to sound like my goal is to make everybody's life happier, because I really believe that the pursuit of happiness is exactly that. It's a pursuit. You have to pursue it. It's your responsibility for finding happiness. And like I said earlier in this recording about living my life feeling content and somewhat satisfied at points, even though I may not be doing what I was doing, I wasn't sure if I was happy. It wasn't until I got here. It wasn't until I really got into this, pursuing this path and understanding where I'm going, and making that change. And part of it was just making the decision to get in the car and drive to Texas, and then knowing that I followed through on it, because that's a huge step. You pack up a family of 5 that on a whim and move across the country with nothing to an area where you have no family support. I leaned heavily on my family, my parents, when I was going through all this. If it wasn't for their support allowing me to experiment with different approaches to life and bailing me out financially when I needed it, I would not have gotten here, at least not in the capacity that I am now. So that's big. You're raising children is, and that's again, I'm listing my pedigree really here, my background, what got me to here, and trying to give some credibility to it. I'm a father of 4, really. I have 1 biological son, and I have 3 stepchildren, and I have been raising them for my son is 16, just turned 16 in December, and I have 3 stepchildren ranging from early 20s to 18. And I've been in their life for 10 years, so I've been raising them for 10 years. So that raising children is difficult, and it's something that I take extremely seriously. And there's things that I learned and came to understand in that process that I can share with that too. So that adds to my what I consider list of accomplishments and things that I've achieved in life. And was it perfect? No. Do I think I did everything perfect for them? Absolutely not. Do I think I had their best interest in mind for everything that I did? Absolutely. And again, it's the intent. And you're going to make decisions that maybe don't work out as well as you were hoping, but as long as the intent is there and you're trying to do it in an honest and honorable fashion, you're going to be successful. And there's a certain perspective and point of view that I have as far as interactions, especially between parents and children, and the lives that they end up living together. But again, for another time. So this is where we're at. I'm sitting in my comfortable home that I'm extremely proud of, and it's perfect for me. It has everything that I've ever wanted. It's basically my dream home. Do I dream of living in a 10,000 square foot mansion or palace? Yeah, I think everybody does at some point. But on a realistic standpoint, this is my dream home. It's in an area that I love. I love the layout of this neighborhood. I love how it backs up to a green belt, so I don't have any neighbors behind me, and I've got basically open nature back there. I've got deer and wild animals galore, mostly stray cats, but that's part of what I enjoy in life. It's everything architecturally inside is what I would want to have, and I'm driving the cars that I've always wanted. Do I dream of driving a Lamborghini or a Bentley? Yeah, I think everybody, that would be fun. It would be, but from a realistic standpoint, the cars that I've been drawn to my whole life, I have, and they're reasonable. You know, my Mustang was $23,000. Again, very reasonable. The Jeep was $38,000. Again, reasonable. You don't have to have a $250,000 dream car to feel like you're driving your dream car. It's understanding your desires and how they fit functionally in your life. And do I ever want to own a $250,000 car? I don't know. Maybe. To me, it almost seems like a waste, but there's a certain experience, a certain quality to those vehicles because of what went into making them. And this is, again, another topic for a different day, but it's really the artist's approach. I am an individual with a warrior spirit. I want to fight constantly. Everything in my life is a constant. It's seeing a conflict and wanting to fight it out. And so I have a warrior spirit, but I have an artist temperament. That's a dangerous combination, but I think it's a very potentially productive mentality to have. That's a fantastic combination for me. It is, because I strive for excellence in everything that I do, and I strive to see the beauty in everything, and I appreciate the effort that goes into creation. And it doesn't matter what you're creating. I don't care if it's an omelet or whatever you determine as the high-end, high-dollar item in the world that would be at the top of that list. But creating is one of the basic. Again, another topic I don't want to get at. I sidetracked, and I want to jump into these other topics. But anyway, let's just keep it at that. It's creating is key, and there's an appreciation for creation in the artist temperament. And that's why I've lived the life that I have lived, and how the reason why I've lived how I live. So I'm not sure where I want to go from here. I feel like I've really accomplished everything in the last however long this has been recording. I've completely lost track of time, which is very easy for me to do when I get lost in my thoughts. But I started off with a certain agenda and a certain list of topics and ideas and information that I wanted to convey, and as scattered as it's been, as much as I've wandered and drifted through this, I feel like I've accomplished that. I feel like I've really established a base for who I am, and it's only the beginning. It goes deeper than I can even explain, and I'm excited about getting it out there and this whole process. So it's been a week of experimenting, 2 weeks of experimenting with the cameras and the software and video editing and uploading and saving and labeling and filing and maintaining, and how do I want to process this, and developing a whole new system in my life, because, well, that's what I do. I develop systems to make my life more efficient. to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish on a daily basis, hourly basis, however you wish to break it out into time. But it's the ability to accomplish tasks in the quickest, most efficient way, and maintaining a system or developing a system to do that. So this has all been part of that process, and now you're part of that process as well. So I think I'm probably just going to go ahead and end here and play around with the recording and see what I can do with it. And like I said, who knows when you'll find this and what impact it'll have on you, and whether it's going to attract or deter you from what I have to say. That's it.